Welcome, everyone, to the Interfaith panel on meditation. I'm Jer Bryant, the Interfaith chaplain at University of Lynchburg. We have some wonderful guests today, Chaplain Nathan Albert, Dr. Steve Dawson of the Religious Studies, and Brandon Bates, who is an English major at University of Lynchburg. I'm going to turn it over to Chaplain Nathan Albert, who's going to ask the first two questions, and then I'll be asking two questions, and then we may have a short meditation. And of course, you can also submit questions. I'll get Nathan to talk about how you can do that as you tune in.
Well, hello, everyone. We are glad you're joining us. If you're watching this live, you have an opportunity to ask us questions. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or even on Twitter, you can respond and we will see those questions. We'll even put them up on the screen, like our friend here, Katrina Brooks, is watching. Dr. Brooks on YouTube. Looking forward to this conversation, as are we, Katrina. So we're going to start just as a panel. We'll ask a few questions about meditation. How does it affect your life, your well-being? And you'll hear from kind of each of us. So I'm going to begin kind of our first question for all of us to chime in. And but the first question is, what brought you to meditation? How did you discover it? How did you come across it? So we'll open that up. And who would like to start? Brandon, would you like to start as a student for us? Thanks.
I start. So what really brought me to meditation, what got me interested in it, was when my first semester here at Lynchburg, which was the spring of last year. I actually had Dr. Dawson as one of my professors, and he had mentioned the meditation meetings on campus a few times, and it kind of piqued my interest because I had kind of had anxiety most of my life, and I've always heard that meditation can help ease your anxiety or calm you down and help with those kind of things. So I remember asking Dr. Dawson about, I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Dawson, but I remember asking you after class one day about meditation, and you invited me to one of the group meetings or the Sangha meetings, and unfortunately COVID-19 hit and I was not able to attend. Everything shut down. But that's when I started myself kind of diving into it by myself. So I kind of watched a few YouTube videos about mindfulness, how to practice it. And then it was probably about a year ago today that I started my first session, just 5 minutes. And that's kind of how it started. And it's evolved a lot over the last year, and I'm looking forward to talking about that specifically. But yeah, it's mostly just because of anxiety. I would say that's what brought me to it the most. And while it did help a lot in that regard, there's a lot more benefits that came afterwards that I think are more important. But the anxiety thing is a big thing too.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I had actually a similar experience as you. I was working a handful of years ago, working at a job, was completely overwhelmed and stressed. I've joked with friends. I used to, at this former job, found myself like putting on noise canceling headphones and like crying under my desk. I was just so overwhelmed.
I'm not able to hear Nathan, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to speak or not.
Oh no! Can you hear me, Brandon?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I'm still here. Sorry, Steve. I'm not sure what the issue is. But I was saying,
I'll address what brought you to meditation question. It was actually a long time ago when I was an undergraduate, and I took a class, an English literature class. I was an English major as an undergraduate. And the class was called Altered States of Consciousness in English and American Literature. And who could resist a class with that title? But I signed up for it, and it turned out to be a very traditional English literature class. We read poetry and fiction from the 19th and 20th century. It was all English language material. But the professor, this was probably maybe at the very beginning of the rise in popularity of the word mindfulness. And so the professor wasn't talking about mindfulness per se, but looking back, I realized that he was teaching us to be mindful readers of literature, and how reading literature and art more generally can be a way of promoting mindfulness. And so he incorporated meditation into his pedagogy, and we meditated for a few minutes at the beginning of every class, and that was the first time in my life that I had meditated. And he was probably the most influential professor that I had as an undergraduate, and I took as many classes with him as I could when I was a student, and then after graduation, I stayed in touch with him, and I sort of fitfully developed a meditation practice over time, and continue to learn more about the practice, and and eventually in the last few years have been able to develop a regular practice. And one of the benefits, so to speak, of the shutdown and being at home is having much more control over my daily schedule than I ordinarily would. I've been able to cultivate a daily practice, which has been a joy.
Thanks, Steve. Jer, would you like to answer what brought you to meditation and how you discovered it?
Sure. Actually, I stumbled upon meditation after I met a Hindu woman during my undergraduate time at Lynchburg College. And I became very interested in Hinduism and Buddhism, and sort of just started reading about meditation and incorporating it into my practice. At that time, I was pretty much just a spiritual person, no longer a religious person, and meditation was a way for me to connect to spirituality and ground myself. So it really started with just me meditating on my own. And then later in my life, I led meditation for friends and also groups on campus. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. I think I kind of have had similar experiences of all three of you, where meditation became something that alleviated stress for me, that I was learning from other people of other faith traditions, coming from a more Christian perspective. I kind of experimented with more of a centering prayer, so more of silence rather than guided meditation. But for me, at least the last couple of years, meditation has been a pretty consistent part of my daily life. And that's kind of into our second question. What does your meditation practice look like? Similar to Steve saying that he, during the pandemic, was able to do a daily practice last summer, I started up more regularly. And I think last week hit 200 days in a row of meditation. So I've used it as a tool of kind of alleviating stress, alleviating anxiety, and also just kind of centering and calming myself. So for you, kind of, what does your practice look like? Is it a regular, do you do it at the same time of day every day? Do you use an app? How do you, what does your meditation practice look like? Brandon, do you want to start us off again?
Yeah. So, I started last year around March and April, and I kind of went back and forth, once a week, twice a week maybe. And around July is when I started doing it every day. So I've been doing it every day since the summer 2020. And I do use an app. So I use an app called Waking Up, and it's a really great app for, sorry, something just happened. All right. And I meditate in the morning times most of the time. So it'll be 20 minutes. I do a 20-minute meditation after I wake up. And then if I can't do that, I'll do it in the afternoon time. And I would suggest using an app. I think apps are really helpful in giving and making it a daily practice. And I think you start to notice the benefits a lot more when you do it every single day, and you learn. And I feel you learn more about it as you go along. So like my idea of mindfulness last year or last summer is completely different than what it is right now. And it's probably going to be something different, in a few months. So I think doing it daily is one of the best things you could do. trying to establish it.
Thanks for that. And Steve?
Yeah, like I mentioned a moment ago, I started an everyday practice last March, and part of the problem was I had a morning routine, but I didn't have space in my morning routine to meditate right after I woke up, and I have since learned that meditating right after I wake up is an excellent time for me to do that. And I was able to learn that because for the past several years, I've gone to the gym first thing in the morning, but in the middle of March, the gym closed down. And so I started my meditation practice in the morning, and then after just 2 or 3 weeks, it was this aha moment of, this is where I should have been practicing all along, and I just didn't realize that. So I have a morning practice pretty much. I get up. We have a couple of dogs, and so I take care of them. And once they're squared away, I'll sit in a silent, mostly breath awareness practice for about a half hour. I incorporate some pranayama or breath work into my silent meditation, sometimes at the beginning and other times at the end. I also usually in midday or early afternoon, if my schedule permits, I'll engage in a yoga practice. And what I'm doing in the yoga practice is synchronizing the breath to the movements that I make. So it's a physical practice, and it feels different, I guess, than the silent meditation. But it seems to get at the same area. Many people use yoga for exercise, and that's perfectly fine because exercise is good and healthy. Meditation is all about good and healthy habits. But for me, I'm looking forward to going back to my exercise program at the gym, which I think I'll get the second vaccine and all that stuff and go back. But my yoga practice is more just a physical form of the breath awareness meditation that I ordinarily do.
That's great. Jared, do you want to share a little bit about what your meditation practice looks like?
Yeah, I think it's evolved. I think it's very fluid and evolves as it goes. First, my meditation was sort of focused on like an idea of meditating on maybe, let's say, a Tibetan Buddhist deity like Tara. And then I worked for a while at trying to let go of all thoughts, and was really focused on tricks that people like Pema Chodron were giving. And then I spent about a little over a year with Quakers every Sunday, sitting in silence, and came to meditation a bit differently. Instead of trying to sort of clear out thoughts, listen to see if the divine speaks. So that would be about an hour every Sunday. And now I think that I generally try to meditate about 15 minutes in the evening right after I get home as a way to sort of ground myself and begin relaxing. But on Friday nights, now my practice is more Jewish in nature. So I no longer do work Friday night through Saturday evening, and I sometimes read like Rabbi Kushner's discussion on Hebrew letters, and then I will pick one of the letters and meditate on that letter. And so that might be 30 minutes to an hour on a Friday evening. And it's just a nice way to sort of close out the week and have a day of rest. So I think that it's going to change throughout my life, and I'm open to that change and welcome it. I don't want to see it as sort of a routine that I have rules on, that I place rules upon. I'd rather enjoy it to be sort of fluid in nature. And that's where I am right now. So maybe 15 minutes every evening, but Friday evenings usually about an hour.
Thanks, Jer. Yeah, I've found too my daily practice is usually about 15 minutes. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon, and that has ebbed and flowed between kind of a meditation that involves focused breathing, as well as kind of body scan or noting when you're distracted and bringing your attention back to your breath. At other times, it's been a little more throughout my day. When I'm really overwhelmed, I might take a 3-minute break and just do a short, become aware of my breathing, slow my breath down, and that can kind of alleviate some of the stress that kind of Brandon had mentioned earlier. And mine has ebbed and flowed too, Jer. Sometimes it's been a little more, I've utilized a prayer or mantra with my breathing in a meditation. So almost like a prayer that I breathe in and out as I am kind of centering myself. There's some parallel with centering prayer, right? In the Catholic and Christian tradition, that centering prayer, is this more listening, kind of like similar to how Quakers do. And then, so that's kind of what my daily practice looks like. But I'll turn it back over to you, Jer, to kind of keep us going with our next questions.
Oh, Brandon, did you have a question?
So I just want to add, I actually forgot to mention the kind of type of meditation I do. So I started with more of a focused awareness, more focused on the breath. And as time has went on, I've worked more into a choiceless awareness. So I really just sit there and I, pay attention to whatever arises in consciousness. So any thoughts, the breath, sounds, sensations in the body. And that's helped me kind of get more of a easygoing flow for my meditation practice. But it's definitely more of a challenge. And I always recommend people to start with the focusing on the breath and then moving on to other things. So I just wanted to add that. You guys all mentioned your practice, and I forgot to say what I did. So
thank you. Yeah. Okay, this next question is for Nathan and Steve, and I'm hoping Nathan can answer and then Steve can answer. How does your meditation practice support overall wellness, your overall wellness?
Good question, Jer. I think it benefits my overall wellness in multiple dimensions. I think when it comes to anxiety and stress, I would say that it has greatly impacted it. I don't know if it's made me less anxious or less stressed, but it has given me a tool to handle moments of anxiety or stress or times when I am overwhelmed. I think it has allowed me throughout my day, if I'm really busy and I don't meditate, I sense that later in my day, like I'm busy or things that I just sense it. It has allowed me to kind of release even frustration, and has allowed me to become more aware of, all sorts of things throughout my day, whether I'm aware of my emotions, aware of the sunshine, aware of just being in the present moment, not thinking on what's going to happen tomorrow, but just being present with my son or my wife or the task at hand. I think on a spiritual level, it has really allowed me new ways to center myself, to experience what I feel is kind of like divine union or connection with God. That it has allowed me to experience something that's sacred, almost like because I'm aware of my breath, right? In a lot of religious traditions, there's this idea of the divine is as close to you as your breath. So there's something like almost mystical for me at times, where as I'm focusing on my breathing, my eyes are closed, I somehow just become aware of something that's holy. And sometimes that's like, as Brandon said, that's a thought, a feeling. Sometimes it's just a feeling of love that bubbles up in me. Sometimes it's someone that I love. Other times it's just a calmness that comes over me. So I think it's given me some ways to support spiritual wellness, mental wellness, emotional wellness. And I think that bleeds into then relational wellness, right? Like if I meditate and I find myself well, I think that then bleeds into my relationships with family, friends, coworkers. So I see it kind of being a tool and an anchor that really helps multiple areas of life. So that I'll turn it over to Steve.
All right, Steve.
Okay. Well, the way that meditation supports my overall wellness, I mean, it certainly has benefits for physical wellness. That would be the yoga component, just as well as as Brandon mentioned at the beginning, the relaxation, reduction of stress, which has physical components as well as mental components. But I think it also helps with what we could call social wellness, because one of the things I've realized, for me, one of the differences between a daily practice and a regular, like 3 to 4 times a week practice, which was what I was doing previous to a year ago. I can really tell a difference in the way that I interact with other people. I'm much more able to interact in the ways that I always wish to do, which is to be kind and generous and appreciative. I don't always act that way, of course, but that's how I want to act. And I notice there's a certain clear-mindedness that comes with daily practice, and so I'm much more intentional in how I engage other people, and and we're very, we think of ourselves as very self-contained individuals, but we're actually quite relational. We extend out in all directions, and everyone that we touch carries us to other people, and so it really affects my social wellness because it allows me to be a more intentional person, and at least it gives me more opportunities to be kind and generous, and and it's easier to be kind and generous if you have that intention in your awareness.
Thank you, Steve. This next question will be for Brandon and also for me. Brandon, we'll start with you. What advice do you have for people interested in meditation?
Yeah, there's a few things. The biggest thing, I mentioned this before, is there's a lot of great apps out there that can help you establish a daily practice, which I recommend doing every day. Like I said, I use the Waking Up app, but there's also 10% Happier is a really good app. Headspace is a really good app, and Headspace also has a show on Netflix called it's either a guided to meditation or a guide to meditation, and it's created by the guy who runs the Headspace app, and it's just a little, short little videos, then guided meditations at the end. So if you want to kind of get into it, I would recommend starting there. And I would also recommend, if you're sitting down for the first time and doing a meditation and you try to focus on your breath, I mean, most likely you're going to go insane because you're going to notice all these little thoughts that will start popping up in your head, and you won't know what to do about it. And I think the biggest problem that I've run into when talking about meditation with other people and their experience is they think that they're bad at it for some reason, and that's just not the truth. That's not. I mean, one, I can't think of any good meditator. I think you're always learning at some point how to become a better meditator, but you're never successful at it. But I would just like to say that when you sit down for 5 minutes or however long for your first session, and you spend, let's say, 4 minutes and 30 seconds lost in thought, and you return to the breath 3 or 4 times only to get dragged back, I would advise not to focus on the 4 minutes that you were lost in thought, but the few times that you cut through thinking and return to the breath, because that is what mindfulness is noticing that you're lost in thought and then returning to the present moment. So I think the important thing is to not look at it as a failure, but to look at it as I actually was mindful. I brought myself back, and that those 3 or 4 times when you do that can get longer as you practice every single day. And I think that's probably the biggest advice I can give is don't be discouraged, because it is not it's not an easy thing. And if you just focus on constantly returning, because ideally you want your formal practice to bleed over into your everyday life. So you want to be walking to class or walking somewhere or just sitting down, and then you can notice that you're lost in thought, and then you can bring your attention back to the present moment. So I would just advise not to, feel like you're doing it wrong, because, I don't think anybody's really, doing it right until, yeah. But yeah, that's the biggest advice I can give.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I think that my advice would also be try different types of meditation. See which type works for you or which types work for you. I know that Oprah has talked quite a bit about meditation, and I like that she advised people to start with maybe 2 minutes a day and then build up to 4 and then 6 and just keep going until you find a time limit that suits you. But there's walking meditation, there's meditation sitting on cushions, there's meditation sitting on chairs. My alma mater in West Virginia Wesleyan College, we would go to the meditation chapel, and some people would sit on the floor, some would sit in chairs, and it was perfectly fine. There was no judgment. I think that Brandon really brings an important point up, which is judging yourself. You have to have compassion for yourself in life. And one of those times that we need to have compassion for ourselves is when we're trying a new spiritual practice. We need to give ourselves time for it to work, and also be open to changing what types of meditation you do. And I also think that there are so many tricks of, if you are trying to empty your mind, clear your mind, and like Brandon said, thoughts come in, you can sort of repeat thinking until you get back to the state of serenity. But I do think that there are great meditations that involve visualization, and I lead some of those sometimes for the Buddhist community here, and they're wonderful resources even on YouTube for visualization practices. So just be kind to yourself and try out a couple different types. So I do believe that now Steve is going to lead us in a meditation. And we're looking forward to this. So thank you so much, Steve, for doing that. And after he finishes the meditation, Nathan will take over.
Okay. So this is a meditation that is it can be practiced if someone's listening or watching who has never meditated before. This is a great first kind of meditation to engage in. But if you're a long time practitioner, it's also a very fine meditation. And this is just a basic breath awareness meditation. But we'll start with some attention to our physical posture, because we want to bring stillness to the mind, and so we start by bringing stillness to the body. So if you're seated in a chair, as I am, make sure that your feet are flat on the floor and your knees are over your ankles, and there's a nice horizontal line from your knees back to your hips. And you have a nice straight spine, all the way from your pelvis all the way up through the top of your head. If you want to bring for a moment some gentle movement to your head or your shoulders, so you can just sort of roll your head back and forth if you'd like, or shrug your shoulders up and let them roll down your back. And then, sort of let your body move a little bit and then settle into stillness. You can close your eyes or just simply keep your gaze downcast. You can set an intention for what you would like for this practice. And an intention is not exactly the same thing as a goal. So you might say to yourself, I want, or I am focused, or I am relaxed, or to look at it another way, I am worthy, I am loved, I can love others. And that will be your intention for the next few moments. And you can bring your awareness to either your nostrils, where the breath enters the body, or to the chest, rising and falling with each breath. And just let your attention settle there. If you find that your attention wanders from the breath, as soon as you recognize it, gently and kindly and with compassion for yourself, bring your attention back to your breath. And if it's helpful for you, you can count your breaths. Count 1 on the inhale, 1 on the exhale, 2 on the inhale, and so on. Or if that's distracting, you can just simply watch your breath. So I will be quiet for a few minutes, and we'll only sit for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll come back and lead us out. So keeping your eyes closed or your gaze downcast, you can let your attention move from your breath or wherever you placed it during your meditation. Let your attention move to the sound of my voice. And notice how you feel. Just observe and perceive and witness without judgment or evaluation. Just simply see yourself. And then let your attention slowly begin to return to the space where you are. You can listen to any ambient sounds you hear, the sounds of traffic or doors closing in the hall, voices, whatever ambient noises are around. And then just slowly let your attention return to the space that you're at and slowly fill that space. And as your awareness turns outward and fills the space that you're in, the last thing that you can do is flutter your eyelids open and return fully to where you are. And we're back.
Thank you, Steve, for that. And for all of you watching and being a part of this, thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend it talking about meditation and going through a short meditation. If you're watching later on, we are glad that you found this, whether that was on Facebook or YouTube. But we want to send thanks to Jer and Brandon and Steve for participating, for kind of sharing your experiences. It's our hope at the Spiritual Life Center to have a few more of these panel discussions this semester. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have one later on in April, and that we hope will be another good conversation. And if you are watching this and you're interested in meditation, as Brandon said, there are some great resources, whether it's the Headspace app or Calm app or even some shows on Netflix. But even on campus here, we have the Sangha group, which you can contact Steve Dawson about that for more information about when they meet. If you're interested in the Buddhist community, Jer oversees that group, and they do regular meditation. Or if you just want to reach out to any of us to ask some further questions and you're on campus, it's easy to track us down, and we'd be more than willing to talk more. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. And as always, it's a great day to be a Hornet, and it's even a better day when you're a meditating Hornet. And we will see you next time.